Good Wednesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready for game against the Baltimore Ravens Saturday afternoon over at First Energy Stadium. It will be the first game at home in Cleveland for Deshaun Watson as the starting quarterback. Watson met with the media today, talked about this being basically his home opener.
My mindset, I'm very excited. This is something that, is the reason why, I picked to come to Cleveland, is to play in front of the best fans in the world. And, I've been hearing things, I've been seeing it on TV, I've been seeing it from afar, from different players and guys that's new to this team this year also, just like myself, what they talk about it and the experience. So I'm looking forward to being able to play in front of them.
And again, let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, when you look at this, these last 4 games are hugely important. Deshaun Watson has to, he was better in Cincinnati, but he's got to look more like, that elite franchise quarterback you went and traded a lot of draft capital for and paid a lot of money to.
I think you saw signs of it on Sunday. You're starting to get the legs incorporated, a little bit of the running game, what he can bring you as far as RPOs or just, his sight and realizing that, I can go get 4 yards here. We'll move the chains and we'll get going from there. I think we Amari Cooper, that relationship, we're not sure. Amari's not 100% right now, gutting it out. But, you saw what Donovan Peoples-Jones was able to do last week with Deshaun Watson. You saw what David Njoku was able to do. The key is going to be once you get past the top pass catchers, what is the third wide receiver, the fourth wide receiver? Because I think those were some areas where you saw Deshaun struggle. He dropped back. The top targets were open. By the time he got to his, he threw his read progression and got to number 3, got to number 4. Guys weren't open. And, Deshaun was kind of that's where some shaking off the rust is going to be, okay, well, those guys aren't open. Nobody else. I got to go. I got to get out of here. And you saw at times he was able to do it. Sometimes he wasn't. But the young receivers who are going to get a lot of work here over the next few weeks because you got to finish out that room. You kind of want to have an idea of what your pecking order is going to be before you start to go to work here in the 2023 offseason. But, what we saw in Houston versus what we saw in Cincinnati, a much more difficult environment to play in, obviously a much, much better team to play against. I think you saw some really, really solid growth from Deshaun Watson, and I think that's going to continue here over the next couple of weeks. I know everybody kind of feels like these last 4 remaining games are, basically meaningless. Yeah, kind of, but you got a lot of work to do here to get, your offense acclimated with your new superstar quarterback. And the better they play down the stretch, the more appealing this is going to be for potential free agents coming up in this offseason. Yeah, without question. And, there will be some changes that are made, I think, without question. So the Ravens defense is what is getting ready for Deshaun Watson. Marlon Humphrey, one of the defensive backs in there, really good middle linebacker, Patrick McQueen, talked about getting ready to face Deshaun Watson.
I think 700 days is a lot of days, and I think, obviously we played the Browns earlier with Brissett, but, they paid a lot of money to Deshaun, and, I have a lot of faith in him, and he's obviously, one of those top 5, top 10 quarterbacks in the league, and limited film, so it's kind of only heating up. So it's not really the best time to play him, but we look forward to the challenge, and it's good to see him back out there.
Is there a feeling when there's a new quarterback in an AFC rivalry that you want to kind of give him a welcome?
Yeah, we want to give him a not so soft welcoming. You know what I mean? So it's cool to welcome him to the rivalry. Hopefully it won't be a good rivalry welcoming for him, but it's always, I think it's interesting to see, when guys come in this AFC North, it's not sweet over here, you know what I mean? So it's interesting to see, how it'll be. I love how basically all the teams now are just good in the AFC. It just makes the game so much funner. It makes the rivalry so much better. And so I'm really excited I know he's going to be there for a while, so I'll be matching up against him for a while.
Still the same guy that he used to be, still a great quarterback, still can move, still can make the throws on the move, can still do everything that any other quarterback could do. So the biggest thing with him is just trying to keep him in the pocket and limit the things that he do well.
And that's going to be a recurring theme with Deshaun Watson. That's something you haven't heard about a Browns quarterback. Keep him in the pocket is that's what defenses are going to want to do against this guy when he gets back to where he is.
Well, the Baltimore pass rush is picked up, so obviously you want that because then you have a chance. If it's not the initial pass rusher, then you have guys with opportunities, to clean up get Deshaun Watson to the ground. And as much as they can all say that, I think the one thing we're going to notice as the weeks go on, and Deshaun does get more comfortable, the athleticism, that stuff will start to come back to him. I'm sure right now, they probably have him, home to let's go through the progressions. Let's not just, run away, escape the pocket with our legs because there's an opportunity there. So it is a twofold approach. It's going to be interesting. Baltimore certainly brings a tough test on the defensive side of the ball. Solid linebackers, solid defensive line. Calais Campbell at 36 years old is still playing like an absolute beast in this sport. Good corners. They're starting to get players back. Marcus Williams is safety. Maybe going to be back this week. So there's a lot of talent on that defense. This defense probably a little bit better, than the Bengals defense. Bengals defense played well last week. But you have to factor in, if he made that much growth from his first start to his second start, how much growth can we see from his second to his third with Deshaun, and, having all the weapons, hopefully Amari Cooper, as the days go on, the hip gets a little more looser, a little more flexibility in it. And then, Deshaun can just go out there, and play. And, maybe now the Browns don't have to worry so much about, their game planning as far as, are we running enough? Are we running too much? And maybe just trying to find the best recipe, the best menu you can put together to get as much work for Deshaun Watson in this game. Of course, gameplay will always dictate that type of stuff. But the Browns want to just keep getting him as advanced as they possibly can and, looking towards 2023.
All right, time for us to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
How you doing? Tony Frost from Toledo, Ohio. 48-year Browns fan. I don't think that we should fire Kevin Stefanski because I like his style, I like his poise, and I like his patience and everything. But I think he needs to give up the play calling on the offensive side. I like his aggressiveness, but you're trying to get too smart. You're trying to outsmart the other team, and you really outsmarting yourself. Let Alex Van Pelt call the plays. He's the offensive coordinator. I love my Browns, and I just want us to win. Go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. It's kind of interesting, Jeff. There's this it's a pretty vocal group of Browns fans that are kind of done with Stefanski. I would listen to the argument of having him give up play calling, not because I think his play calling is bad, because I think the game management has suffered is the reason I would consider listening to the argument you should have somebody else call the plays.
Well, this is difficult because we're talking about this here like you should give up the play calling. This is a whole new world now. I mean, we've had 2 weeks of Deshaun Watson as a quarterback with a relationship of Coach Kevin Stefanski. So to say we're going to just change that now, and I know the play that everybody's going back to, they're going back to the Jacoby Brissett play. I get it. We were all confused by it. You have a $238 million quarterback. Why are we taking the ball out of his hands? I mean, it's just something that doesn't make much sense. So I think that's, where you get these type of, remarks from fans about Coach Stefanski. There's a possibility here over maybe the next, last couple of weeks, maybe you try this. You let Alex Van Pelt maybe, call some plays here. But Coach Stefanski, this is his ship. Basically, at the end of the day, he is the one, and he'll say week in, week out, this is on me, this is on me, this is on me. So if he's going to take it, he can't use the excuse. But I understand people's thought process, but we have not seen nearly enough yet of his play calling with Deshaun Watson to say whether or not, maybe we have an issue here yet. I understand fans are upset. And, I think maybe everybody was expecting Deshaun to show up here and just throw for 600 yards in his first 2 starts, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, all that good stuff. But it does take a while, 700 days, like like Marlon Humphrey said. The rust is coming off. I mean, he went from, 12 of 22 for 131, threw for 275, was able to be a part of what was the best day of Donovan Peoples-Jones's career. You saw where David Njoku's going to fit in with a more mobile quarterback, a more athletic quarterback. I understand people's thoughts and nerves about it, but if that change is going to happen, I don't think it's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. Maybe it's something they'll, work through and maybe decide on over the offseason.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Last 4 weeks, you got to get used to what he does well, how he can fit into this scheme. Let me ask you this. Last 4 games, what do we need to see from the Browns for you to feel good about 2023? And then the flip side of that, what are some red flags? If you see this, what are you going, I don't know about that?
Well, I think Jackson spoke to this today on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and he talked about the fact that you're going to get the idea of where players' hearts are over these next 4 weeks. It's really difficult when you understand maybe you don't have much to play with and you're playing out of string. To go out there and make sure you're going 110%, but you can't play this game any other way. Your focus can't be any other way. So that's going to be very, very important for me. Some of the red flags are going to be, what happens if they get down? Are we going to see the pity party? Are we going to see, lack of effort? Or are we going to see, just getting manhandled by the run game because, maybe guys are trying to make sure that they don't get dinged up, don't get a late season injury, spend their off season rehabbing. And also, I'd like to see some more of the younger guys play here over the next couple of weeks, Perrion, Winfrey, some of these other guys. Because if we keep trotting out, I understand the possibility of going 9-8 is there. And, it does sound like a participation trophy. But going 500 means something. Coach Stefanski, that'll be 2 out of 3 years. He will, bend over, 500 records. So there is that. But the question is, how do you do this correctly here, make sure you're getting, guys looks who need them, who've maybe earned them, and making sure you're not burning out some veterans here where they don't get into a situation, where they're onto the rehab, section in the offseason. If a player gets hurt right now, you're starting to see some of the guys just coming back who got hurt about 1 calendar year ago now. But for me, if they start, basically falling over and you just see some games, maybe where they get down early and you don't see the fire, you don't see the competitive drive, then, you certainly have some concerns. There's no question about it. This team is, with Deshaun Watson, is supposed to be a lot more talented, and we're expecting to see 60 minutes of football week in, week out. You all get paid to do it. It doesn't matter if playoffs are off the line or they're on the line. You got to go out there and you got to do your job week in, week out.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out, take a look at some offensive line rankings here from Jack Conklin. We'll also hear some thoughts nationally about what Deshaun Watson looks like and what they want to see moving forward. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. This is from the Peacock streaming service. Charles Robinson on how the Browns are measuring Deshaun Watson's progress.
Here's how they're looking at it, okay? And it was interesting. I had a chance to talk to somebody in the organization leading into the Bengals game. And I thought, okay, and my preface with the conversation was like, hey, you guys got past Houston, getting Deshaun back. It's got to feel good, like you got over the hump. They actually were looking at Cincinnati and saying, Cincinnati's more kind of the one we want to get out of the way. And I was like, why? They said, well, first off, the Houston game was weird. There weren't a lot of fans there. Maybe what we thought in terms of what was directed at Deshaun, it was more going to be something that would happen in the Cincinnati game than the Houston game. He didn't feel that much heat, and it wasn't as big of a mental hurdle as really what he was going to face in Cincinnati. So they looked at Cincinnati as a really formidable game in front of them, both on the field and off the field with Watson. So I think now that they're past that, they're kind of ready to move forward. But the big thing that they were focusing on going to Cincinnati, they're like, look, what happened in Houston, we expected it. Deshaun's been off 700 plus days. He was going to be rusty. I'd seen him in practice in camp. He looked rusty. He looked a lot like what he looked like in Houston. But this person who I spoke to said, what's he going to look like now from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4? If we see him take a step from Houston and get better and play better, play closer to the guy that we know he can be in Cincinnati, we're going to be okay.
And Jeff, that makes sense. You need to see 2 to 3 has to be better, 3 to 4 has to, and so on. Each week you got to see him get a little bit closer to what you expect him to be.
I think for me, the most impressive throw from Sunday, he moved out of the pocket a little bit to the left. There was basically a tackler on his leg and fires a 22-yard bullet to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Normally if you had not been, playing competitive football, and you certainly haven't been dealing with pass rush, you feel anything, your common thought, your first thought is probably just to go down. He stayed up, battled, fired a dart, certainly, a tough throw with somebody around his legs. But this is what you're looking for. And you got to keep in mind there's parts of this Browns offense that we still haven't seen yet, and more that you can do with Deshaun as far as RPOs, as far as his ability to run the ball. So anything you can do to get, the defense thinking about or having to put their attention to something else will ease things up for Deshaun. Biggest key here is that, we're going to need some of the young receivers here to kind of get on the level of play. You can find ways to take guys out of the game in the NFL. But when that happens, other guys have to step up. It's your David Bells, it's your Michael Woodses. We'll see maybe if we get a look at Jalen Darden here over the last few games. There's some weapons here, that we need to kind of make some decisions about for the Browns. And, that along with their play with Watson, it's, somebody can find a way here, whether it's a Woods, whether it's a Bell, these guys can show up, make some plays. It's, probably going to, relieve some nerves in that building, and you're going to start to believe that, this Deshaun thing is going to go exactly where they want it to go.
The other thing, it's a little different for the offensive line as well. So Pro Football Focus O-line rankings. Eagles number 1, Packers number 2, Chiefs number 3. The Browns check in at number 7, which is down. They were in the top 3 as high as 2 earlier in the year. But it's a fair ranking. The Browns' offensive line has not played well. And again, I know you're on your third center. That makes a huge difference. But they haven't played as well as I thought they would play, Jeff. What are your thoughts on the O-line?
Well, I would definitely say, the fact that, where we got the center possession certainly is not helping. Wyatt Teller, he's out there dinged up this time twice now. Jack Conklin getting better every day, but still not 100%. And the funny thing is usually what had the Browns so high in these rankings, and let's be honest, 7's not bad. It's not.
Right.
But what had the Browns always so high is, the propensity and their ability in the run game. That's certainly diminished over the last couple of weeks. You want to hopefully get that back to par. But, look, there's a whole bunch of moving parts here, with Deshaun coming in. Everybody's trying to learn. Everybody's just trying to feel everybody out. They're still blocking well in pass pro, which I think has been, solid to this point. Need to get the running game back on track. And it's hard as a unit, and we got spoiled here. Let's be honest, folks. We got really, really spoiled with this offensive line. Not many teams run back their offensive line for 2, almost 3 seasons like the Browns were going to do. So these guys just know each other so well. Some changes, some guys not physically at 100%. The play is going to dip, but as good as they were for the period they were, there was nowhere else really to go but down a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And you mentioned Jack Conklin, not quite 100%, final year of his contract. He was asked earlier this week, would he like to stay in Cleveland? Here's Jack Conklin.
Cleveland will be my home forever. So, obviously I would like to be here for the rest of my career. We'll see what happens and how that works out. This is the place I definitely want to be, but how things work out. It will work or it won't work. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But right now I'm worried about these next 4 games and making the most of that and doing what I can to be a part of a win for this week.
And Jeff, if they find the right number, Jack Conklin will make a whole lot of sense. But it will have to be the right number.
Well, first things first, this checkbook's going to be open everywhere come March. And money talks, obviously. And, Jack Conklin could go somewhere and, probably retire in 5-6 years and make his home in Cleveland for the rest of his life if he chooses so. But I think that's also kind of a statement from Jack Conklin, basically saying, I do want to be here. I am comfortable here. It's probably, to say, you line up every day next to a guy like Wyatt Teller, probably not a bad thing, Plus, this is also where you see the factor of Deshaun Watson. It sounds like these guys believe Deshaun Watson is going to lead this team to a lot of success. Who doesn't want to be a part of that? So I think maybe for Jack Conklin, maybe just floating it out there early, of his intentions. Certainly would love to keep him. I know a lot of people get up in arms about what the Browns pay for their offensive line, and I get it, I do. But to be like the overall number one offensive line for almost a 2.5-year stretch, like the Browns were able to do, that's really, really solid. And a lot of guys were really, really proud about that they were able to, be that good for that long. Granted, there's been a little dip here. But it sounds like we have a guy, who's content and maybe sees where this is trending towards. And it certainly sounds like he's not looking to duck out anytime soon.
All right, before we head to another break, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. I was just wondering, does the dream team of analytics upstairs have any influence on Stefanski's play calling? Thank you for taking my call.
As always, appreciate it. Jeff, I would imagine they do. What are your thoughts?
I think they talk. But the other thing is, you can say everything you want, but once you actually get into the flow of the game, and their chart may have looked great going into Sunday's game. And then DJ Reader blew up, 3 out of 6 runs. I think it was the run. And this was like, all right, well, now what? Because, you can go in there with a plan and things, backfire on you. You've got to be able to adapt on the fly. That's something we did hear a little bit about, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball. They weren't able to adapt there. But it also seems like when the Browns' run game gets stymied a little bit, everybody kind of just looks around like, well, geez, there's the best thing we have going for us, and we can't do that. But, yeah, I'm sure there's, talks about it as far as what's going on. I'm sure there's analytics that Paul DePodesta wants to bring in. I'm sure Andrew Berry's there, just doing his due diligence in every meeting. But I think for the most part, they trust what coach is doing to this point. And again, everybody wants to get up in arms, but Deshaun Watson has only been this team's quarterback for 2 games.
Fair enough. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, look a little bit more at the defense. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is my first time calling. My name is Loretta Phillips, and I'm in Dayton, Ohio. But I wanted to ask a question. Why didn't they double team Chase? They should have, because I think they could have stopped him. Thank you.
Loretta, don't be a stranger. Jeff, that's a really good question. I think a lot of people were asking that very question about Jamar Chase.
Well, especially when you were given the advantage of their other 2 wide receivers leaving the game as early as they did. The other thing is why didn't we switch it up? Martin Emerson's had a fantastic year. He's a bigger cornerback. Maybe could have got a little more physical with Jamar Chase around the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of head scratching as far as that, and especially once you saw that it was going to be the first read and it was going to be the first throw. The other thing is Denzel Ward was giving up so much cushion, it was really, really hard for Joe Burrow not to go that way. But yeah, ideally, in that situation, you take away their top weapon, and you make him find a working relationship to move the sticks, get some yards with his 4th wide receiver, with his 5th wide receiver. Those relationships didn't look as comfortable. The Hail Mary, the flea flicker was there, obviously, but that's just a simple, easy throw to make if you're Joe Burrow. But in that situation, yeah, you should probably really, really should have put it to Joe Burrow and said, all right, well, if you're going to beat us, you're not going to beat us with number 1.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid question. This is from ESPN 2023 draft needs. And for the Browns, don't have a first-round pick, but they need a difference-making defensive tackle in the 2nd round. That should be a priority with limited draft resources moving forward. Jeff, I think we've been talking about the defensive tackle position and the lack of value that has been placed on this like ad nauseum, you and I specifically?
We'll see how it works, because I'm not saying it wouldn't be the first overall draft pick selection they make. But I certainly think that they are going to open a checkbook. They are going to try to get some sort of veteran in here, somebody that's proven at the position. Because look, even if your first pick and where the Browns are maybe trending, you're talking maybe pick 40 overall, 41, 42. You can't really go into making that selection of a defensive tackle and saying, okay, well, this guy's going to come in. That's it. We've now fixed the issue. I think this is something they're going to probably look at the outside first. They're probably certainly going to draft another one. They can probably clean out most of that room, even though Perion Winfrey has looked improved over the last couple of weeks, even though Tavon Bryant hasn't been bad. But the question is, was Tavon Bryant good at a bargain of $2 million? Now, will he want more this offseason? Is he going to be the same type of player? The Browns worked in one of these relationships with Jadeveon Clowney, 2021. Jadeveon Clowney at $8.5 million was an absolute bargain. This year at $14 million, they're not getting the return on that investment. But that is, I can guarantee that is going to end. That drought is going to end. They've seen what it's done. It's cost them players. It's cost them injuries at the linebacker position. These guys are getting manhandled, beat up. The Browns' initial depth chart listed 4 starting linebackers because they had Phillips and Anthony Walker, as co-starters in middle linebacker. All 4 of those guys are on injured reserve. The Browns have to do something at the defensive tackle position, and they are going to address that position extremely hard this offseason.
Yeah, and again, it was a mismatch. You had smaller defensive tackles, light linebackers. Yeah, that doesn't work. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I just want to know, why on earth does Joe Woods refuse to adjust in-game? How can you let the best player on the Bengals and one of the best receivers in football continuously torch your defense without double-teaming him? And why does the Stefanski let it happen? Obviously, I'm not on the football team, so I don't know how it goes, but I feel like as a head coach, you should have the veto power to tell your defensive coordinator, hey, that guy over there is killing us. Why don't you go send a double-team his way and let somebody else beat you? I just want to know your thoughts on that. Thanks.
That makes a lot of sense, Jeff. I agree with him again.
Look, even if the game didn't go the way it went, where Boyd went out and Higgins went out, if you're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, what is the first thing you're taking away? It should have been the game plan regardless. The game plan regardless should have been, we are not going to lose to Jamar Chase. If you're going to beat us with everybody else, beat us with everybody else. Which is basically the way any game plan should be formulated any week. I'm sure when anybody is talking about facing the Cleveland Browns on any given week, on the defensive side of the ball, the first thing is how do we limit Nick Chubb from killing us? So look, I mean, he's asking basically, you probably had 100 of those voicemails, a lot of head scratching. I don't know why somebody didn't intervene. I don't know exactly, why, and to hear John Johnson III kind of say, oh, well, we as players, I don't get that. I mean, you're not calling the defense. I mean, that really needed to say, okay, well, let's see. Jamar Chase has got this many targets. This is the type of production he's already put up. They're sort of running the ball. The numbers got, I would say fluffed there with the long mix and run. But yeah, I mean, that's just one, we'll ask it a million times. We probably won't get the answer. But regardless, if you're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase should be the number one option of what you're trying to take away.
I agree. And I mean, yeah, I don't have an answer to that. That seems like very basic. Let's take a look at Myles Garrett versus the Bengals. So, again, Pro Football Focus grade 92.3, pass rush grade 90.5, couple of sacks, 6 pressures, better than 30% win rate, 2 run stops. He played well. It's 1/11th. You can't do one guy as good as he is can't do it alone.
And this is also what happens. Teams are smart enough to say, all right, well, you kind of set Myles up to win. And you say, look, okay, if he's going to get the outside rush, I've got to be smart to step up. I've got to be smart to step underneath and basically run into the path where he is coming from. Hopefully I can get around, my left tackle can get just enough so I can get to the spot where Myles rushed from. Browns were also smart. And, as we talked about, they started moving him around. letting him get different looks, just, so the offensive line, it makes it tough for them to get their calls off, because obviously everything is usually contingent on where number 95 is lined up. Other guys need to get on the same page. They need to get players that can play at this level with Myles Garrett on the defensive line. And it even got so bad where Jonah Williams, I don't know how the referees didn't do anything or didn't even throw the flag once, or even though there was a conversation about it. But it basically got to the point where Jonah Williams was in, sequence with Joe Burrow's cadence, and he was actually leaving early. I mean, I can't blame the guy. If you're going to get away with it, you certainly continue to do it, and you're not trying to get Joe Burrow killed. But keep in mind, Myles is still dinged up. But what we see week in, week out, the effort, the type of player this guy is, just the overall talent. I mean, he's just an absolute dream player to watch, a dream player to cover. The Browns, certainly still have a lot of questions heading into 2023. But as far as, making sure, one of the most ultimate things for a defense is having that devastating pass rusher. That is something nobody in that building has to worry about.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I keep coming back to about this defense and why I think Joe Woods has to go, they don't play to their strengths. There are guys that have specific strengths on the football field, and we don't put them in position to use them.
There's no God. I couldn't agree more. And the other thing is like, I think the rotation on the defensive line at times has been an issue, because you end up with, Myles is getting a blow, and then Clowney's getting a blow, and then maybe Brian's getting – it's like, well, these are all the average players playing at the same time. Maybe start a series, with Jadeveon Clowney on the bench, or start a series, with Myles Garrett, off the field for first and second down, because, let's these guys go 4, 5, 6 reps in a row. You start subbing people in, subbing people out. You look, it's an all second team, third team defensive line. And you're basically just, giving the offense opportunities at that point. We understand Myles can't take every rep. No guy in the NFL can. But then again, it also comes down to the overall talent. You see some of these teams, and a lot of these teams are playoff teams, guys like the Buffalo Bills. They can still go out there without a Von Miller, and they're rotating in 7, 8 quality players on the defensive line. Browns have some evaluations to make here over the next couple of weeks to see how many of those guys they have. But ideally, the good teams in the NFL, they have no problem. They can go 6 deep. They can go 7 deep at the defensive line position, just understanding how paramount getting after the quarterback, getting him off his steps, getting him out of his read progression, getting in his face. You see how much it is. You see a lot of individual talents in the Browns, like getting their hands up, knocking balls down. But they got to find a way to get this group a little bit deeper and to play a little bit more in sync with each other on that line.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, and I'm going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Here's some more from Deshaun Watson. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. So some background here. This is a voicemailer who called in and voicemailed us about my comment that we're not going to see the entire offense with Deshaun Watson from until the second season. He thought that was laughable, and he brought Baker Mayfield and what he did on 2 days with the Rams. So let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
It was interesting to see you address my call from yesterday about being an apologist for Stefanski. You know, Dave, a big part of disinformation is based on distraction and diversion, and you did a pretty good job of that by talking about Baker and, oh, he was bad there and he's been around all year and it was the Raiders are bad defense. And good distraction, good diversion, Dave. It was about Stefanski. It was about the coaching. It was about how Odell went to L.A., he flourished. Baker goes to L.A., he flourished. And it's about the coach. It's not about the player, man. And it is Stefanski, and it is his COVID brain damage. It's sad but true. Stefanski had COVID. He hasn't been the same ever since. There's been no creativity in the Browns offense, just fake creativity. And it ends up looking stupid. And not just because it doesn't work. It's because it's not really creative. So, Dave, stop focusing so much on the players when the problem is the coach.
First of all, you brought Baker Mayfield up and said, what a great job he did in 2 days. And I wasn't aware you had an MD after your name. We'll have to check into that. But the simple fact remains, a guy that hasn't played in 700 days, Deshaun Watson, Kevin Stefanski, in his system, you're not going to see everything until next year. So you can say anything you want, but you'd be wrong. Jeff, your thoughts on that?
Baker Mayfield had COVID last year. So I guess, Baker Mayfield has the genes where he can, I guess, overcome it. Very strange way to go about that one. And look, 2020, so we're going to say that was all Baker Mayfield. But then 2021, that was Coach Stefanski. It wasn't Baker Mayfield. Look, one thing we know about Baker Mayfield, and, how long his career can be in this league, I'm not sure. But if the play calling schemes the guy open, Baker Mayfield excels. When it doesn't, Baker Mayfield has his issues. And yes, that final drive last Thursday night was impressive. But one of the easiest things to kind of emulate and simulate when you walk into any team or any practice is the 2-minute drill. Everybody's running up to their spots, and basically, there's only X amount of pass patterns you're going to run when you're going 4 wide like they did. I'm not taking the moment away from Baker because it was cold. It certainly was. And it was good to see him flourish. And obviously, if anybody needed a feel good moment, it was Baker Mayfield. But as far as COVID and affecting his coaching ability 2 years later, I have no answers for that. And let's also keep in mind, when he did have COVID in 2020, the week of the Pittsburgh Steelers game, he was highly involved in putting together the game plan that other guys coached. And so it was his game plan. He just maybe didn't actually coach it. But yeah, that was an interesting one as far as these voicemails that have come in here so far this season.
Oh, you have no idea. Here's the other thing, though. Fair enough to say that we won't see this offense with Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson, all of it, until the second season, because it's his first time in this system.
Absolutely. And you also have to keep in mind, there's parts of this, they're not going to incorporate new things now. And there's been parts, there were parts, Baker was, an okay athlete. Jacoby Brissett, a lesser athlete than that. So there's stuff they're not even going to bother putting in. And then when Deshaun came and he did start practicing for 2 weeks this year before he was able to play, you're not going to start putting in, you only have limited time to do things in NFL practices. I mean, does anybody actually look at, and reading the tweets, okay, these guys are on the bike, and then you see an hour later, practice is over. There's only so much you can get done. There are a million things they want to get to. And the other thing is parts of the playbook right now, you're trying to say, we think this will work with Deshaun. Well, maybe it doesn't. Then guess what? That comes out and you put other things in way, way too early. And again, I mean, this has been the theme here today, this point, Dave. It's been 2 games with Deshaun Watson playing quarterback with Kevin Stefanski. It has been 2 games, 2 years away from the game. He's played 2 games. And what did, Charles Robinson say? Vast improvement in what the Browns thought was going to be the more difficult situation, the more difficult game. And we saw a giant leap from Deshaun Watson in Cincinnati.
Deshaun Watson talked about getting more explosive plays into this offense, something that Amari Cooper said, yeah, that's coming.
Of course, that's what we want to, aim for, is being able to be explosive, get those big chunks downfield each and every time. But, before we do that, we have to do the little things right, and that's taking the, little, easy plays that the defense give us, the run game, getting that going. And once we can kind of put all that together, then the big plays is going to, take care of itself. So if we can do the little things right, then the big things will take care of itself. But I agree with Amari, that's what we want. That's what we have, the athletes and the talent to be able to make those explosive plays. And we just got to go out there and make sure we do it.
And again, Jeff, that's one of the things that it takes time to get used to each other because it's not something you script. It's a feel. Like, he knows I should be here. He wants me here when he's rolling this way, here when he's rolling. Those are all things that will come.
And you certainly did not see that in Cincinnati. And a lot of those big explosive plays, a lot of those usually come off of, a breakdown in coverage or, escaping the pocket, and of course, you're on the roll, you're doing a scramble drill. Those things are all common. Look, I mean, you can simulate things in practice. You truly can. But once you get onto the game field, and look, Jesse Bates is a really, really good safety. You're going to see probably another good safety this week in Marcus Williams. Those guys are covering the deep pattern. You got to take what you can give, and you're not just going to throw jump balls. Just everybody's trying to put so much on Deshaun's plate right now. For me, there was the one interception Sunday, but the 275 touchdown, David Njoku starting to see the legs get acclimated with the rest of his body. I think where we're progressing is exactly what we're looking for, and hopefully these next 4 weeks we start to get more answers than questions.
Jeff Lloyd, great stuff as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best. Thanks for having me again, Dave.
All right, Jeff Lloyd, make sure you check him out, Locked On Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, I'm a Browns fan out here in South Dakota. I'm just really trying to figure out why, with all the talent we have on the Browns, we are playing like we are. Is it coaching? Is it just a lack of desire? I just love the content on YouTube. Thank you guys very much for what you're doing. Go Browns. Hoo, hoo, hoo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. That's a good question. Let's tie that into this poll that's been on cleveland.com regarding Kevin Stefanski. Will Kevin Stefanski be the head coach of the Browns next season? 1,200 say yes, 1,000 say no. Our next guest tweets this out. Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, saying, ready to stake his claim, been hesitant. Kevin Stefanski, good man, smart man, hardworking man. A lot of respect for him, just not the right head coach for this football team. Scheme, not what Deshaun Watson needs. And Hayden says he is ready for the hate. Let's welcome in Hayden Grove, Plain Dealer in cleveland.com. Hayden, take us through just kind of the thought process behind that as well.
Yeah, I think that with Kevin, I think that this team needs
specifically a strong vocal leader. And I don't think Kevin is that. This team doesn't have a strong vocal leader. It doesn't have, a guy like Jarvis Landry. It doesn't have a guy like Baker Mayfield. It has, a lot of leaders in terms of maybe on the field and what they do, and Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper, but those guys are all quiet. And sometimes this team needs a kick in the butt. And I think that needs to come from the head coaching position. And it's just, that's not who Kevin is. So I think that for that reason, for this specific team, Kevin's not the right guy. And I think that's where they're at this year. Now, next year, could they bring in, players that have a little bit of a different leadership style? And could they bring in some new coordinators that show some fire and some flash? Yeah, or not flash, but if they show some fire and some accountability, then yeah, maybe Kevin can be the guy. But, for the time being, I really think that this team is not achieving because of what Kevin is about, what this team is about, and the fact that they don't really mesh together.
So you're basically saying he's too cerebral. You need somebody that,
No, I have no problem with him being cerebral, but you can be cerebral and little hardcore. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can get after guys just because you're not cerebral, or just because you're cerebral doesn't mean you can't be hardcore and can't give the guys the motivation that they need to get going. So it's a little bit of that, but it's also probably more so just not having that strong leadership style, I would say.
Fair enough. I don't have any problem with his play calling, but the play calling combined with the game management, I have some concerns. And I'm a guy that likes him, thinks he will eventually be a very good head coach. That's why I'm not in any hurry to move on from him. Do you sense that the play calling the play calling hadn't been bad, but the game management, some things are not going the way they should?
I think the game management is I think you're right. I think it's like a combination of game management and situational play calling. I think situationally the Browns don't call plays very well. I think when it's 1st and 10 and this game, like we've all seen it, when it's 1st and 10 and the game's just starting. Yeah, Kevin has a great script, 100%. But when things are going differently and there's a change and something happens here and something happens there, then things don't go as well. And I think that's because of the situational play calling. And I think, there are a lot of times when Browns fans will say, oh, we'll run the ball. And then you see them passing it. Or you see the Browns fans will say, oh, well, this should be a good, not even fans, media too. Just people are saying, oh, this would be a good spot to throw the ball. And they don't. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like, okay, just situationally, things don't go well, and then you're right. Game management, things don't go well either. It's just, I think Kevin's I don't think he's in over his head. I just think that he is an offensive coordinator. I think that's what he is. I think he's a great offensive coordinator, and I just don't think that means he's a head coach.
That's fair enough. All right, big questions from every game. This is from ESPN.com. For the Browns, where does the offense go from here? Browns have scored one offensive touchdown with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, getting its $230 million franchise player acclimated. Is all this lost season figures to be about now? And that last line, that's pretty much spot on. You got to figure out, what does this offense look like? What is this offense's personality with Deshaun Watson? They have to answer that question, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree with Jake, and I also disagree with Jake. I think the last 4 games are about whether Kevin Stefanski is the guy for Deshaun Watson. Because you don't want to go into next year, say they lose 3 of the next 4, right? And you don't want to go into next season saying like, oh boy, here we go. Kevin didn't play well with them last year, and then they start off 2-5, and you're like, yeah, you got to get rid of Kevin, and then you got to start over again. The rest of this season is about figuring out if Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson will work together and will work together well. I know it's not necessarily perfect. I know it's not necessarily fair for those guys to be asked to, or for Kevin to be asked to get it together. But he also had great quarterback play for most of the season or very good quarterback play from Jacoby Brissett for most of the season. So I can't really sit here and say that I feel bad for Kevin. Again, this is Kevin's opportunity. He was the one that wanted to get Deshaun Watson in there. So along with Andrew Berry, these guys wanted to get Deshaun Watson because Deshaun Watson fit Kevin's game plan. Okay, well, show it over the last 4 games. I'm not saying they have to win. I'm not saying they have to play. I'm not saying they have to necessarily win big, but you want to see them win. You want to see them go out there and play solid football, and you want to see Deshaun Watson feel more and more comfortable. Even last week against. And the reason I said what I did is because he just didn't look comfortable. He didn't look like he was in a good space in the offense. He looked like he was kind of hamstrung. He said today they only took 2 shots down the field. They only wanted to take 2 shots down the field. I think with Deshaun, you should be taking, 5, 6, 7 shots down the field per game. I mean, that's where he shines, is when the ball's in the air for a long time. So I just think that Kevin's offense is all about control, all about timing, and all about, just being – it's got to be like a well-oiled machine. And I think Deshaun doesn't really play like a machine. He's kind of a freelancer. He's kind of an artist, a painter that kind of does his own thing. It's not about structure. It's about, making plays just by being and doing, rather than, other things being and doing. So I know it seems kind of, for lack of a better term, abstract, but I think Deshaun, is less about structure and more about just, hey, go out there and play football.
Yeah, get him out in space and see what he can do, because he's a pretty good athlete. All right, Deshaun Watson talked today about what he's going to see with that Ravens defense on Saturday.
Just everything, the mechanics to the operation of the offense to decision-making to, completing balls on time. Just everything was just a complete improvement for my game.
Do you feel like it's, you had mentioned you don't know when it's going to come back fully for you.
Right.
So if you kind of had to, I guess, weigh where you're at, how close do you feel like the player that you are?
I'm not close to where I'm at. And I don't want to be where I was in 2020. I want to be better. So I have a long way to go. I want to continue to improve. I want to be that player whenever I step on the field. No one can stop us. And that's my mentality. But we have to go out there and continue to show that and try to do that and not just talk about it, but actually prove it on the field. So I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And this team also is nowhere near where we want to be. So we got to continue to just keep growing and finish the season strong.
Obviously, that was Deshaun talking about how to improve. And then, again, we had talked about that. You got to see that every game.
Yeah, you do. And I want to see more. I want to see more. I'm not saying that I want to see everything. I just want to see signs of comfort. I want to see signs that this thing is going to go. Some people have told me that there are signs and they do see things, and that's great. And I'm okay. They see it. I don't yet. And maybe that's something that'll change. Maybe I will see it soon, and maybe over the next couple of weeks I'll say, oh yeah, that looks different, or oh yeah, that makes sense. I see that now. But as of right now, I'm just not seeing it. It doesn't feel the way I thought it was going to feel. I thought it was going to feel more open. Thought it was going to feel more, just kind of, it just would flow better, more rhythmic. But I actually think Jacoby's been more rhythmic, and I think Jacoby's offense had a lot more flow to it. It wasn't as open, but I don't think either offense right now is open. So I want to see it open up. I want to see things kind of, continue to come together. And if they lose a lot of games, if they lose 3 out of these last 4, and Deshaun doesn't, put up more than 300 yards in a game, and seems to be hamstrung, then maybe it's time.
Hayden Grove from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, I was listening to you and G. Bush discuss Jedrick Wills moving the right tackle. That's not the answer either. I mean, anybody that's watched the Browns over the years, anybody that's watched football over the years let alone the last 3 years or whatever Jed Wills has been there. Jed Wills' problem is effort. Period, point blank. It's effort. Lack of effort. I mean, it's every play he gives up on a play and starts looking behind him and everything. And then you see Batonio and Taylor and all these guys way up in the linebacker and secondary area, and he just standing there with the play around him and not doing anything. He does not have a motor. I mean, his motor has blown up, and I don't know if he ever had a motor, but that's the problem with Jed Wills. Y'all take care. Love the show. Bye.
Appreciate all the voicemails. Hayden, your thoughts?
Yeah. I think that Jed is he's just not that prototypical big, he's not that prototypical kind of AFC North lineman, and I think that we're so used to the Joe Thomases and, so used to the guys that are gritty and about that life. And Jed's not that kind of guy. So, I would say that, honestly, the motor doesn't seem to always be there. You're right. It seems like sometimes he's, not giving his all. I think that it's more so just the kind. I actually would try to put him at right tackle. I honestly would, because, I think that there's talent there. And I think that he's just a different kind of offensive lineman, that he's not really about, what most offensive, we think, and I don't know if it's stereotypical and wrong, but when we think of an offensive lineman, we think of a guy like a Wyatt Teller, like a Joe Thomas, like a guy from Virginia Tech, like a guy from, or from the backwoods of Virginia that's going to go hunting and fishing. And that's not Jed, So maybe for that reason, I think we just see him a little differently. Doesn't mean he's not getting the job done as one. Just because he's not, doing it the way that we expect him to, that's maybe more so that the job is more, it doesn't look the same, but it's getting done the same. So I would say that, again, it's just about letting him do his thing, but also trying to find where that fits in with this Browns team.
Yeah, I would agree. When you look at these last 4 games, is there anything that you could see in them that would change your mind about Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson and this team moving forward?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you see in these last 4 games that Kevin Stefanski, all of a sudden starts to really mesh with Deshaun, the offense starts to open up and they're scoring 30, 40 points a game, and Deshaun's throwing the ball down the field and things look great, then yeah, I think I would change my mind a little bit. I would say that, I think that that Kevin and Deshaun are coming together, and maybe this will work better than I thought it would. Also, if they win these games and they come down the stretch and they look really good winning them, then yeah, I would say, okay, sure, I think that there is an opportunity here. But if they played the way they did against Cincinnati, even if they played the way they did against Houston, where the offense looks disjointed, where they beat themselves up and don't do the little things right, I don't see myself being like, yeah, this is the guy going forward. I mean, you built your team around your quarterback. You got to build the entire team, and that from the coaching staff on down around this guy. And that's the problem with spending $230 million on a quarterback, because that's your centerpiece. Everything around him needs to be in the right place, be it the head coach, be it the wide receivers, be it the offensive line, be it the tight ends, be it the running backs, be it the whole team needs to be centered around him. So that's what I'm saying here.
When you do you think it's fair to say we're not going to see exactly how he fits into Kevin Stefanski's offense this season, even because you had to play a certain way with Jacoby Brissett, and you can't expect the other 10 guys to change immediately on a dime.
No, but at this point, you're out of the playoff race. I would just let it go. Throw the football. Let the offense open up. Have some fun out there. I mean, this is a game. Yes, it's serious, but go out there and let it rip. That's what I thought. And Houston, I expected a little less of the letting it rip, but against the Bengals, that's a game where I felt like the Browns had the mental edge in that game, and they had every opportunity, and it just still felt like it was somebody was, the Browns offense had a governor. And then in the second half, when they were down, then you saw, okay, throws opening up, things happening, Deshaun making things happen, throwing balls down the field, whatever. I know he got picked. He's going to get picked. He's a quarterback. He's a gunslinger. That's what happened. So I think that there's an opportunity and a possibility for that to happen in regards to for him to open up. And I think over the last 4 games, I'd love to see.
I agree with you on that. We want to see him kind of throw the ball down.
What is there to lose?
You're right. And the other thing is, it gives you some answers about offensive line, wide receivers, and the complementary pieces. Because the quarterback's not changing. You made the point. $230 million, he's the centerpiece of it all. Hayden Grove, great stuff, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight.
Thanks, Dave. You have a great day.
All right, Hayden Grove, make sure you check him out, Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.